This is Venture Investor Economic Forecast by InnMind, and today our special guest is Peter Braun. Peter is board member of European Business Angel Network, EBAN, and also founder and CEO of iTel, which is a Swiss company providing services to wealth management, digitalization strategies, business angeling, and etc. Hi, Peter.
Hello, everyone. Pleasure to being with you, Nelly.
Pleasure to see you, Peter, as well. I know that you are now in Tenerife in the lockdown. So tell me, please, what are you thinking of the current situation in the world, including and considering the financial situation and the global economic and social situation?
Whoa, this is going to be a long answer. So first, I think that this crisis is a crisis that is not just a health crisis or a medical crisis. It started off as one, but it is also becoming an economical crisis increasingly. The longer this situation of a lockdown will remain, the more companies are affected by it. And of course, there's a difference. Some companies will benefit from that, and other companies are just going under. So it's going to be a very tough and indeed global crisis. I think it has been underplayed or not understood well enough from the very beginning. It was not taken serious enough by maybe the majority of people, including the political leaders. And the countermeasures, I believe, are weak. So on the medical front, we see that in many countries already disaster is happening and the wave is, so to say, rolling in. All the measures that we are taking, lockdown included, the idea is to dampen this wave and to avoid the peaks which will overload the medical systems. So I think it's very important that everyone tries to play along and to take this very serious. The next problem, you mentioned that in your question, of course, is how is our economies affected by that? And the countermeasures that are being taken just with quantitative easing and throwing a lot of capital at the companies will not be sufficient to respond to that. And then I think there's a third or fourth dimension. So the third dimension, I believe, is our culture, our society will change. So the behavior of people will change. And it's very hard to say, is it going to be for the better? So there's a lot of affectionism, there's a lot of empathy, people trying to help each other, and people are very quickly adapting. And at the same time, there's a lot of fear, there's a lot of, unease in the people, and aggression and greed, and all of these things also show up. So it's simultaneously, and we don't know yet which part will, prevail or be stronger. And then as a last thing, I think there's also a political dimension where a lot of freedom is taken away of people in the excuse of Corona crisis. And I'm very skeptical which of these freedoms will be handed back to people and when. So I think there's some hidden agendas, and we should be on our toes and observe what will play out and who's playing what games here. In other words, people will try to take advantage of this situation. So
yeah, that is completely true. They have now a very good excuse for managing freedoms.
Right. So very hard to give a short answer to your question. It's a very complex situation. And of course, we are not aware of all the information we would need. In other words, we do not have enough data to make any prediction. Just take it serious on all fronts. I believe that's what I can answer.
Peter, I fully agree that predict anything when nobody is certain is a little bit selfish or even stupid. But what do you think, just your guessings, how long it may take to recover for economic, financial and business perspectives?
Again, a very tough question these days. I come back to my first assessment. I think the severity of this crisis was underestimated. So we see that in some countries, China, they try to go back to normal. Mr. Trump says, hey, in 2 weeks we'll restart economy. We see in Germany that some car manufacturers try to plan for restarting their production. Again, from where I sit, which is on an island, so no information basically, unless what everyone else can also guess and have access to is, I'm afraid this might be too early. I think this crisis will, also the medical crisis will last longer. I believe I'm not any way competent. I'm not a medical person. So what I'm saying here is naive or just my common sense. But I believe it would be too early to go back to normal. We have to give this situation enough room to allow that the infection rates are really going down, and not just with the first flattening of the curve we try to go back to normal. And then I believe it will not be normal, it will be a new normal, right? We don't know yet, but it will be a new normal. And then lastly, you're asking on the economics. I think we will see a lot of companies tumble. A lot of companies have been held upright as a zombie company, so they have not been productive. It was just too many people employed with them. And with those companies going down, we will see another banking crisis coming. So I think if you ask me today, from where I sit, it will last longer. Then we will see a recovery, and then we will have a real bad hit. And that's probably versus the end of the year, where the medical crisis hopefully is over, but the economic and financial crisis will hit.
Mm-hmm. Peter, business angels are very special beings in the global investment and startup scene. They are very different from venture financials, and we had a lot of interviews with venture investors recently, but you are the first real representative of the angel side, and not just personally business angel, but also the head of quite a big and well-known organization in this field. So how can you describe us what is happening in with the business angels sector?
So first of all, I'm speaking here on behalf of myself, even though I'm part of angel organizations. I can tell you that this organization, EBAN, that I am serving as a board member for 10 years, is trying to do a lot in terms of education, in terms of webinars, in terms of trying to keep information flow going to our members and also other interested parties, which is entrepreneurs, startup entrepreneurs, of course, and angels, and also larger organizations, angel networks, countrywide organizations of angels. So that's a fact, and I think this is a very, very important work these days. Business angels typically are people who have been, and there's a variety, but who have been serial entrepreneurs. So we have been through a couple of rodeos and through a couple of crises typically. And maybe I see it as my job. When you ask me, what are you doing these days? I try to coach my teams, my entrepreneurs, my younger entrepreneurs through this crisis. And I see a lot of reactions. There's fear, there's uncertainty, but there's also a great team spirit. And I would say this much, as an entrepreneur, and again, business angels typically are or have been entrepreneurs, you have to be always out of your comfort zone to make things happen. So I think we have a big advantage these days because everyone else is thrown out of their comfort zone, but they're not used to that. So they panic and they go crazy. And this is very understandable and easily happens. So there's psychological problems and there's, economical problems, there's fear, there's being shell-shocked, so to say, by the amount of complexity and the speed things rapidly change. So from one week to another, from one day to another, things are not as they used to be. So I would encourage everyone who is an entrepreneur, also the young entrepreneurs, first-time entrepreneurs, the startup entrepreneurs, take your courage and be smart, think outside of the box and try to seek help from your business angels if you have them. Get into discussions within your teams. How can you radically change? Because this is a radical situation. It's a severe situation. So you cannot continue as you were. You have to do big changes. Some companies are supported by the change. So they're benefiting, biotech companies, for example, or people who do medical equipment could benefit to a large extent. Zoom, we're having this Zoom call, is thriving. And I, of course, that's great, but many other enterprises, travel and what you have, airlines, of course, are suffering badly. And so you have to think outside of the box and you have to quickly adopt. And as a startup, as a lean startup, hopefully, with a lot of flexible thinking, this is what you should do.
Definitely panic and scare is never healthy for decision making. And that is one of the reasons why we are making this series of interviews with reasonable and constructive opinions of the people from industry like you are. But Peter, just to understand better, how do you feel being in the board member of many angel networks and associations? What is the feeling of business angels who previously were interested or active in investing into the startups? Are they trying to save their assets or move them to the financial markets, for example, to buy stocks which are down instead of making the same, I would say, risky investments, but in the innovative companies? So what is your good feeling? What is happening with this segment of the market?
Very hard to these days give a general opinion. I see both, right? I see people who are trying to make a quick buck, and that's totally okay. I believe it's super dangerous to invest in stocks these days. So that's what I would call a dead cat rebound. I think we will see this declining strongly, and I talked about the zombie companies before.
So it's not the bottom yet.
It's not the bottom yet. I mean, there will be a rebound, and there will be even things looking better. But as I said earlier, I personally believe at the end of the year, of course I cannot be exact, we will have a severe financial and therefore also economic trouble. I personally keep investing, and I just closed an investment for one of my companies last week, and I'm in discussion with that. So of course it very much depends on what kind of company and how is it positioned and what will it address. So one of the things we see happening is that digitalization will get a big push. So, and there's a huge understanding now suddenly and movement, for example, also within public entities, municipalities, that they cannot operate the way they used to. And their killer argument has been for the last 20 years, but we have always done it this way. And now suddenly they're hit with a new They used to do it in the 90s, and it's 1890 what we're talking about, when people are still filling out things with pen and paper and so on. So will it happen overnight? Definitely not. But it's very important to understand how are your customers' problems and pains hitting them. So my advice, and this is what we're doing, we enter into very long conversations with our clients. We try to listen. We call them up. They are accessible these days. They're doing home office, most of them. And they also enjoy having a conversation about, what their problems are and how they have to change and what they could do. So this is my little tip I'm happy to share. Reach out, listen, be not a know-it-all, be humble, because we all don't know. But listen carefully and understand your client's situation, your customers or prospective customers' situation, and try to reach out as a partner, as someone who offers support and help, and build trust in this crisis. And I'm sure this trust that you build on a personal level, on a personal relation, will surpass this crisis. And then afterwards, maybe there's an opportunity to do business.
Peter, thanks a lot for this very wise practical advice. It is in the top 10 of the best advices I've heard for this crisis. And can you think over some other practical advices for startup founders on how to see opportunities in this crisis? Because, as we know, every crisis is black and white. So about black, there is a lot of stuff already told. Save your capital, keep your cash, etc., etc. But how to look and to see these opportunities?
Yeah, actually, so as you said, a lot has been said, and it's maybe not very wealthy to repeat all of that, of course. Please protect your runway, make sure that you're there when the crisis is lightening up or over. But what can you do on a short term? So what I proposed to one of my venture funds, that we would create a community amongst all the founders to exchange best practices and to learn from each other. So I think that is a good thing to do. So talk to your peers and try to exchange how they see the world. We have two little data points to really come up with a good picture. So if you exchange with people who are also out there, also fight for their lives, if you want to call it, and I think that's a good initiative. Everyone with their specific company has to find their own answers. So there are no general applicable answers. As I said, travel is maybe badly hit, but one company is just licking their wounds and saying, "Oh, we're a victim of Corona crisis," and the others say, "Hey, our business model is actually enabling people to help them, the customers, travelers that are stranded somewhere and that need to come back and they cannot, and so on. Maybe their service can help them. Maybe this is the exact right message right now." So one of the companies I'm invested in and also serving as a board member is a travel company. And they got a couple of great articles launched about how their digital services will actually enable people to being better served in this crisis, and also to help travel agencies to have better access to certain information and so on. So again, every situation is different, and it very strongly depends on the individual entrepreneur if he seeks chances also in that.
Mm-hmm. Peter, you mentioned that a lot of customers became available now because they are sitting at home and can be reached out, even GR customers. Same probably is happening with some of the investors. So, for example, if those founders who will be watching this video would like to reach you out with their startup pitch as for angel investor, or to invite you to join their board as a mentor, is it possible to do it during these times? Are you more free and available nowadays?
Well, a lot is possible, and at the same time, the typical way angels invest is they would like to do a personal meeting, they would like to do an on-site visit to, sense the spirit, to meet the team, and so on. I'm a fully digitally organized person, so I travel a lot. That means I typically do not sit in an office. Yes, I used to visit the companies, I invest in the companies I coach. This is not possible these days, so we have to do it like we do it online. Is that sufficient? Will people actually invest in totally new startups? I doubt it. Honestly, I doubt it. I would say this is something, again, where you have to build trust, and there's a tremendous amount of opportunities. Deals will be very likely cheaper than they used to be. So prepare for, if not a down round, then at least a different price of that you can expect to get these days. So investors have to mitigate their risk, and they will do it by negotiating harder. At the same time, I believe there are deals out there and companies. I cannot, of course, talk about specifics, but when you have a really productive company that will solve a major problem, this is also an opportunity for investors to get into that. So a lot of companies will die, a lot of companies will vanish and will disappear, and a certain amount, maybe a smaller amount of new companies will prevail, not only survive, but they will thrive out of this crisis and become leaders in solutions that we have not known until today. So how do you pick these? Every investor, of course, has an investment thesis. And we all investors have to rethink that these days. So we cannot be glued to what was working yesterday, and yesterday, I mean, until February. Right? The world is dramatically changing, rapidly changing. We don't know how it will look like. So very likely we will not make any decisions before the dust will settle. But we will, at least I will, reach out and talk to people and to get a better picture. So what are you working on? What's your customers doing? How's your market reacting? I'm asking these kinds of questions for myself to get a better understanding and a better, hopefully, assessment of a future that I don't know yet. And then I will make my investment decisions, not today, but maybe today I start a dialogue with people, and who knows, I might or might not invest in them later on. So that's one thing. The other thing is I try to protect my portfolio. So instead of making new investments, I try to take care of the companies I have been working with or have been in touch with before. This is where I know people, where I met people probably, and where I understand that they're fighting. So I try to help them. Very likely this will override any new potential investments that comes out of the blue. Last comment maybe, but that's always true. Investments that come out of the blue do not have that come highly recommended from people I trust, from people that invite me to co-invest along their side. So those are the things you should be looking for and seeking.
Then logical question is, are you going to change, or how are you going to change your investment strategy? Do you have already some hints? I mean, the top industries which will fly after this crisis, and you keep an eye on them?
Well, it's not so much a big change because I was investing in digital basically only, but this will in certain sectors be receiving a big push. So and then the medical sector, telemedicine will be receiving a big push. Everything that can work remote, everything that will, support communication That's what we do. Working from home, home office, new social models, that will be interesting. Maybe also, I see a lot of things happening online that were, you know, from yoga to psychology to I don't know what. Yeah, it's very hard to say. And as I said, I'm not at the end of my analysis. I'm at the start of the beginning. But I believe these sectors will you know, have a lot of benefit. And look at Amazon. I mean, online, everything, online shopping is just it because all the shops are closed. So what are you going to do? I did an Amazon order this morning. So it's too early, but there will be drastic and deep impact changes.
So you will think it over, you are now reconsidering, but the final understanding on how your investment strategy changed will be at the end, not in the middle of the crisis.
Very likely, I'm now preserving my cash. The question is which currency, and where do you keep it?
Anything in crypto?
Yes, some, but very, very difficult these days to decide what's the right way to do. So, but I'm looking at one company that I'm going to also be serving in the board and as an executive. I cannot be specific which one, but it's in the field of energy and energy storage in an environmentally friendly way. Because the first thing that are sold out, besides in Germany, toilet paper, God knows why, is batteries and candles. Oh. And this is really interesting. So light and communication, besides water and food, is what everyone needs in this crisis.
Actually, yes, because we are more or less all okay, working in digital field from our computers, from our homes, being in lockdown, being in quarantine. But if I just imagine for 1 second the electricity is down and internet is down, that will really be the crisis number one of all the times.
Yes. And it's not so much about entertainment and being productive, but just to be able to receive alert messages or whatever, you have to upkeep communication. So that's definitely an important field.
And of course,
I cannot be more specific.
Smart TV, I know.
Yes. That's absolutely a big field, and yes, one of my companies, iLocator, is in that field, and we see a big change in how people perceive working online and digitalization in that field. It's rapidly picking up, but of course, rapidly for that sector is still slow.
Yeah, I know that. I was just thinking of iLocator when I asked this question, because recently I was talking not only with people in Spain, but also in some countries, other countries in Europe. And they said about the opportunities out of this crisis that this will be a great push for local governments who are quite old schoolish in some even progressive countries in Europe to switch into more digital way of working, managing of the city, and etc., etc. And this is a great opportunity for such companies as iLocator.
Yes, again, I don't want to talk about this company, but as an example, I would say what we at iLocator are doing these days is not just trying to sell products and services, but we try to listen to our clients and understand that they have, let me call it, a barrier of entry into the digital world. So what we are offering now is to help them, actually, to train and educate them how to use these tools and how to familiarize themselves with that. So it is actually something that we, if you would focus on your core business, should not do. But given the crisis, we are doing it, and we're reaching out as a partner and trying to enable our clients or our clients' clients to become more savvy in these fields, to then of course, enable them to being able to make a smart decision about what services and what infrastructure support to purchase. So this is an opportunity, again, to reach out to your customer and to keep building trust in such a situation. This is what we try to do.
That's an amazing example, and I wish majority of startup founders which are watching this video now will think over customer development, because this is the king and thing number one to do in any time, but especially during the crisis. You should go to your customers and not just check the social media, guessing or what is happening. Peter, Thank you so much for your interview, for your time, and for fighting with the internet connection in Tenerife, but making it happen. I wish all your recent deals to become unicorns and bring you lots of money. And I hope and offer, if you need any support from our side, from the educational part for angel investors, my personal hope is to bring as many people from speculating on the financial markets to the white side of the road. I mean, angel investing in the startup companies. Thank you very much, Peter, for your great interview.
Thank you for the questions and for the ability to share some of my insights with you, and all the best to you personally, and of course to all people who watch this, and stay safe, stay healthy, and stay at home.
Yeah, take care, and see you soon.
All the best. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.